Works. Comprehensive Neuropsychology Services, Gene Chambers, Ph.D. Scott McCarty, Ph.D. Neuropsychological Evaluation. Patient name, Herb Blair Dobb. Mr. Date of intake. Dates of evaluation. September 19, 2012. Date of report. September 24, 2012. Social Security, XXXXX minus 3,755. Referral statement. This 68-year-old white male was referred for a neuropsychological evaluation by Dr. Linker through Vista Health Outpatient Referral Services. Mr. Lair was initially referred to Vista by his primary care physician, Ronald Reese, MD. Pertinent history for this evaluation. Mr. Lair was accompanied to the evaluation by his wife. She assisted in providing her perspective on some of his difficulties. Mr. Lair reports that he owned a company which he sold in 1994. He then sold a second company in following that event. He became involved in financial services, and the economic collapse in 2008 made his business very difficult to maintain as financially successful. Adding to his stress was he underwent surgery and developed some complications. Through tough and difficult times, he began to accrue numerous credit card charges, which in turn created stress in his marriage. Subsequently, he went to see Dr. Reese. His wife, Sandy, states that a year previous to this evaluation, she discovered that Mr. Lair had borrowed money from their son, which she states shocked me. This money was supposed to pay off credit card debts. She then made inquiries if he had stopped charging, and she would check the mail every day for 1 year to obtain evidence that his charging had ceased. She stated in April 2012 she looked in the back of his car and found that he had obtained a secret P.O. box. She found one card that had maxed out charges at $15,000 and a second card in her name that also had maxed out at $15,000. When she confronted Mr. Lair regarding this, he made the statement, "It is no big deal." She states that when she confronted him, she became concerned that he might physically harm her. In addition, she reports that he has been somewhat paranoid, accusing her of an affair, and she states that he has a tendency to be jealous. Recently, she reported that he has done strange things and exhibited personality changes along with this strange behavior. Current medications: Lotensin 40 milligrams Q-Day, Digoxin 0.25 milligrams Q-Day, Pradaxa 150 milligrams BID, and 606W Sunridge Drive, Fayetteville, AR 716 and 76. Page of Toprol XL MG Day. Past medical, psychological history. Mr. Lair reports only one head injury which occurred in high school. He states that he got hit by another individual and it knocked him out. For disease processes, he has been treated for high blood pressure and atrial fibrillation. He also has a family history of his father having Alzheimer's and a mother and a brother experiencing many strokes. Surgical procedures include back surgery in 2009 and a cyst on his kidney in 2009. He denies ever being treated psychologically or psychiatrically. Personal history. This individual has a master's in science and mathematics. He has been married for 48 years. Recently, the marriage has become quite strained. Personal habits. This individual does not smoke. He drinks alcohol on a limited basis and denies the use of recreational drugs. For leisure, he participates in golf and has enjoyed travel. Test procedures. Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale 3 WAAAAAA T-Trails A and B California Verbal Learning Test, Logical Memory I, and 2 Letter Fluency Test, FS, Boston Naming Test, Speech Sound Perception Test, Individual Variables of Attention Continuous Performance Test, IVA CPT, Beck Depression Inventory 2, Beck Anxiety Inventory, and the Millen Clinical Multiaxial Inventory 3rd, MMCMI the 3rd. Test findings: intellectual functioning. Selected subtests from the WASR were administered to assess aspects of EMS. Toloson's intellectual functioning. His working memory yielded an index score of percentile and a processing speed index score of ND percentile. When normed for his age and level of education, his working memory falls into the low average range, and his processing speed falls into the above average range. On a separate measure of processing speed, TRAILS A, Mr. Lair scored in the mildly impaired range, T36. Verbal episodic memory on the California Verbal Learning Test. This individual scored in the below average range on his initial learning trial. His final learning trial yielded a below average outcome as well, in which total learning across the 5 trials fell into the mildly impaired range, T39. Long delay free recall was also mild to moderately impaired, T34. The recall of narrative story passages was undertaken with the completion of Iandel subtest. This individual's immediate recall fell at the 45th percentile, while delayed recall fell at the 36th percentile. Executive functions, TRAILS band letter fluency, FAES were administered as measures of executive functioning. TRAILS B fell into the below average range. F and letter fluency was found to be mildly impaired, F, page 3 of 4. Verbal skills, the Boston naming test, abbreviated form was completed. This individual scored in the mildly impaired range, T equal to 36. Attention, concentration, the Seashore Rhythm Test, speech sound perception test, and individual variables of attention continuous performance test, IVA CPT, were completed to evaluate measures of attention and concentration. The Seashore Rhythm Test was found to be mildly impaired, T39, while the speech sound perception test was mild to moderately impaired, T equal to 34. On the individual variables of attention continuous performance test, IVA CPT, Mr. Lair generated a full-scale response control quotient of 109, average range, and full-scale. Attention quotient of 106, average range. Psychological functioning. The Beck Depression Inventory 2 and Beck Anxiety Inventory were administered to measure both anxious and depressive symptoms. This individual endorsed a mild level on each inventory. The MCMI III was completed. Mr. Lair's responses suggest the need for social approval and an aviti about psychological matters. Access to personality patterns. Currently, there is reason to believe that at least a moderate level of pathology characterizes the overall personality organization of Mr. Lair. His defective psyche structures suggest a failure to develop adequate internal cohesion and the less than satisfactory hierarchy of coping strategies. Mr. Lair's foundation for effective interpsychic regulation and socially acceptable interpersonal conduct appears deficient or incompetent. He is subjected to the flux of his own enigmatic attitudes and contradictory behavior, and his sense of psychic coherence is often precarious. He has probably experienced a checkered history of disappointments in his personal and family relationships. Deficits in his social attainments may also be notable, as well as a tendency to precipitate self-defeating vicious cycles. The MCMI III profile of Mr. Lair suggests the public front of social propriety and conformity probably hides a deep, conflictual submission to others and intents that suppress antagonism. He struggles to maintain a disciplined self-restraint and social affability. Axis I, clinical syndromes. Currently, strong evidence indicates the possibility of delusional thinking. Mixed jealousy, persecutory beliefs in Mr. Lair. Quite probably, These symptoms interweave with features of his personality syndrome. Given his disposition or background, these paranoid symptoms are likely to have intensified as a consequence of experiencing maltreatment from persons with whom he turns for support or security. He may feel abused by what he sees as betrayal, and his primary repressed resentments and suspicion may have been through previously adequate controls, servicing and taking shape as persecutory beliefs. Page of summary. This year-old white male was evaluated with a neuropsychological test battery and personality assessment to evaluate his current level of cognitive, psychological functioning. Cognitively, he exhibits several areas of mild cognitive impairment that would constitute a diagnosis of cognitive disorder NOS. There is notable deficits of his ability to focus and concentrate, processing speed, and registering and retaining list items. He was in complete denial of depression and anxiety on the Beck inventories, but did endorse a level of anxiety on the McMy III. Also, the McMy III suggested the presence of narcissistic and paranoid personality traits. The following diagnoses and recommendations are provided. Diagnostic impression, Axis 1, Axis 2, Axis 3, Axis 4. Cognitive disorder NOS, 294.9. Generalized anxiety disorder, 300.02. Histrionic and paranoid. Personality traits, atrial fibrillation, hypertension, marital discord. Recommendations. Individual therapy could prove beneficial in dealing and managing Mr. Lair's current indications of anxiety and likely depression. Once he makes progress in this area, couples therapy might prove beneficial as well. 2. Annual evaluations are indicated based on his family history of dementia and recurrence of many strokes in family members. Thank you for interesting referral. 14. Gene Chambers, PhD, clinical neuropsychologist, 9319 PHGC, CNWT, September 24, 2012.